Right. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. So we'll begin the workshop now, inshallah. If we just start off with du'as, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي ربنا زدنا علما ربنا زدنا علما ربنا زدنا علما. And so we've come here today on a sacred day, which is one of the days of Ramadan. And in general, even on a day outside of Ramadan, when people come together to seek knowledge, to mention Allah's name, then there are many benefits to that. So, for example, in a hadith in Muslim, we're told that Allah has many angels who rove about the earth seeking out gatherings in which Allah's name is being invoked. When they find those gatherings, they sit with them, they sit with these people, and they fold their wings around them. Subhanallah. And there are many other narrations, um, telling us similar things. So we're actually very fortunate. As your host today, I'm also very fortunate to have this opportunity with you all. But we're also very fortunate to be in a gathering like this, especially on a sacred day of Ramadan. So to begin, Bismillah. This is right in the middle of Ramadan. It's the intention is that you benefit from this workshop in a way that you can recharge and reconnect. Many people around the middle, they kind of slow down. Sometimes they lose motivation. And sometimes they've set goals and they've fallen short and they're not sure how to climb back up. So that's what we're here for today. So hopefully, I'll be holding your hand through that process and you'll come out of this recharged and rejuvenated, inshallah. So, to begin, where I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what to expect, what we're going to be covering today. So, of course, this is one of the many beneficial events that the Muslim Family Foundation hosts. And so just going to briefly just touch on what we do and what we offer. And then practical tips, of course, that's really, really important. And followed by sustained worship. That's also very important. Ramadan should have an effect, a lasting effect on our lives. So we'll talk about that, inshallah. That's going to be followed by the last 10 days. That's, of course, just round the corner, subhanallah, just 5 days away. And so this is actually the best time to sit down, think about what we're going to do, what our intentions will be, and so on and so forth. And then the last two are more spirituality based. The fifth topic is on taqwā, and that's because the very purpose of fasting in Ramadan is to increase in taqwā. So how do we do that? We often hear about definitions, like it means God consciousness, but what is that exactly? So we'll talk about that. And then briefly at the end, for a boost of motivation, hopefully, we're going to talk about some of the Ramadan feats of the pious, that if they could achieve so much, surely we can achieve a percentage of that. So that's what we'll be covering today, inshallah. So to begin, just about us briefly, the Muslim Family Foundation, we offer many services. You can remember them by the 3 C's. We offer courses, many live, interactive, and transformative masterclasses, many which are one of a kind, subhanAllah, the first that's been kind of offered like this to the Muslim community. Many counseling services as well. We offer Islamic counseling and also camps. From time to time, we have scholar guided and family friendly camps. All of this to serve the Muslim community and benefit as many people as possible in as many ways as possible, inshallah. So moving on to our first topic, which is practical tips on how to have a productive Ramadan. And this will depend on you and your timetable, how much free time you have, what you're already used to, what you're already doing, so on and so forth. So the kind of tips I've given are, general ones that hopefully will benefit as many people as possible. So to start off, the most important thing is managing time. Um, our life is just made up of time. And, if we were to just utilize this very well, it's our primary asset in life, then we would succeed in everything. So that's the primary thing. And most people that I've found who struggle in Ramadan aren't meeting their goals and so on and so forth. It's primarily because they're not managing time properly. And this is where, we'll cover a few things. So first and foremost is having a plan. This might seem obvious, but I don't think people in general take this as seriously as they should. So, for example, the Prophet ﷺ said, "La aqla ka-tadbiri," that there's no intelligence like planning. So, a truly intelligent person who wants to make the most of their life, well, for us, the most of our Ramadan right now, we would have a plan. So, having a plan now, what does that mean? You'd have an overall plan for the month. And I think most people have that. They have a general idea of what they want, but that's not really sufficient. A person should have a somewhat detailed plan, where they have a plan from at least the night before, but ideally you'd have an idea of what you're doing every single day. And so research actually shows that planning ahead boosts your productivity. Because in the moment, if you have to plan in the moment, that actually drains your time, and it also takes your energy to do that. And so when you have a plan, you just look at it and you follow it. And it makes things very streamlined and very easy, and it reduces stress as well. Now, I'm going to talk about a few pitfalls, however, when people plan. And this is what it is. This is where people, plan poorly. And that's why they can't follow through with their plans even after they've made one. So, firstly, what a person would want to do is triage, meaning you would want to prioritize the major forms of worship and make sure that they are being done to the absolute best of your capacity. And one of the tricks of shaitan is to make a person prioritize nafil actions, meaning optional actions, before compulsory ones. And the compulsory actions are the most important. They are the most rewarding. And, if we fall short on them, then we'll actually lose barakah in the rest of our day. And even the nafil actions we do will not have any barakah in them. So that's really, really important to plan your day, for example, around your 5 daily salahs and these other compulsory actions, and then, then the sunnah mu'akkada, the emphasized sunnahs after that, and then the nawafil. So Taraweeh, and in particular, a person should be very careful about that and ensure they are fulfilling all the rights of Taraweeh and giving it its due time. So that's one thing, and that's got to do with spiritual blessings, right? These are ways we can be deprived of spiritual blessings, and then we can't follow through on our plans. A second way is where people they don't realize their humanness. I mean, they don't understand that they would need times to rest. They would need time and periods of time where they um have to actually schedule that into their plan. So we're going to actually talk about that later on, the art of napping, inshallah, and resting properly. But it's actually really, really important, because when you over plan, you actually have kind of planned to fail, because you will not have time for all of that. And again, in the moment, on the day, when you're trying to follow the plan, it'll become haphazard and chaotic, because you can't follow through on it, and then you won't understand why not, and then you'll feel upset. Why is my plan falling through, and why can't I follow it, and so on and so forth, right? It's just a downward spiral from there. So, and we know the Prophet said this, that your body has a right over you. So that's also really important, to not think that we're superhuman. And so, yeah, being realistic, of course, is a really important part of making a plan. So moving on is the time blocking method. So when you make a plan, how do you do it? And again, these might seem like simple things, but they're all very well research backed, and many a times the simple things are the most effective. So it's really important that we allocate specific blocks of time, like I already said, for worship, but also responsibilities, and we know when we're doing what. So time blocking, again, is being proven to enhance productivity. It reduces procrastination and decision fatigue. So this is really interesting, because when you have a set plan and you have a time for everything, you're not procrastinating the decision-making process. And so that immediately saves time. And also decision fatigue, another thing that I mentioned, that in the moment when you have to decide on the go, that itself is exhausting. And so you want to avoid that. If you do it beforehand, you save yourself from a lot of that mental fatigue. And again, this is something that people underestimate. how much mental fatigue can demotivate you and unfortunately make it so that you can't follow through on your plans. So moving on, we have removing distractions. So this is another thing that can sabotage your plans. And again, people don't think ahead well enough on what can actually come in the way of their plans. So distractions, like screen time, that's for most people, it's screen time. So we have to set screen time boundaries. And there's many ways to do that. It depends on your device. Some people download apps that block like social media at certain times of the day. Some people have actually on their phones, they actually have those systems already in place where they can put time limits on apps. At the very least, a person can turn off notifications and remove temptation away from them during worship times. And this is again, as the day progresses, your capacity to deal with mental stress actually reduces. So as the night progresses, you're more likely to fall prey to following your nafs, and you're more likely to fall prey to reaching for your phone, because out of the tiredness that naturally progresses over the day, you lose more of your mental capacity to fight your nafs. So make it easy for yourself. Remove the fight. Why have a fight in the first place? So when you're praying, for example, don't have your phone near you. You will be tempted. You'll reach out. And some people, unfortunately, have a really bad habit where, like, every two rakahs of Taraweeh, they're reaching out for their phone. Um, and that will really sap their productivity and their spirituality, um, because their mind's going to be all over the place whilst they're praying. They're not giving themselves the opportunity to focus on that one task. So, remove the fight. That's the best. The best advice is not to teach people how to fight, is to teach them how to avoid the fight in the first place. So avoid tempting your nafs. Remove any distractions. Obviously, I mentioned technology because that's the main one, but it could be anything. And just have it just completely out of sight, out of mind. And that's also really, really important. Moving on to the next point is having clear goals. So that's another way people self-sabotage. It's where their goals are very vague. For example, they aim that, okay, this Ramadan, I'm going to read Quran. And that's it. That's their goal. But that's very vague. How much are you going to read? And when are you going to read it exactly? When, when during your day do you have time to read Quran? Or many people, they need to make time. So when are you going to make that time to read Quran? And so when you set clear goals like that, it's exponentially more likely that you'll actually fulfill those goals, right? And it increases, like I said, the likelihood here of task completion. Another thing is scheduling challenging tasks for your peak productivity times. So we know that the Prophet prayed for barakah during the early morning. So early morning is where there's most barakah in the day. And, naturally also you just have the most energy again, because like I mentioned, as the day goes on, you lose that energy. Energy is, it saps. So you want to schedule the most challenging tasks during that time, if during those times. And again, that could differ person to person. It depends on people's schedules, sleep schedules, so on and so forth. But those are the times where you'll have the most capacity, you'll have the most attention, you'll be able to fight your nafs the easiest, so on and so forth. So again, these are ways to, set yourself up for success, because just having a plan is not really good enough. You need to have a plan that's thorough, where you've thought about the different things that can actually set you away from your plan, or make it more difficult for you to follow it. So may Allah give us tawfiq. I mean, so moving on to the next topic, it's regarding creating a balance, and that's regarding what I said previously, how we should be ambitious. That's also very important, right? We need balance, right? We should have himma, meaning we should have high ambitions. If we don't, we'll never progress as human beings, or even as a society, we won't progress. And so we have to have ambition. But we have to temper it again with understanding that for example, our body has a right over us, people have rights over us. So creating that balance is really important. Actually, one of the identifying qualities of this ummah, where we're referred to as ummatan wasata, the moderate nation, meaning we hit the sweet spot. Well, if we study properly and we learn properly, then we are capable of doing that, where we always are moderate in everything. And like I said, we hit the sweet spot of progress, spiritual progress, mental progress, and physical progress simultaneously, right? So, right off the bat, obviously, really important to pace yourself, right? That's really important that we pace ourselves. Moderation in worship allows sustained devotion, right? And that's much more important. So, yeah, and consistency is more important than bursts of activity. So again, the Prophet said that أحب الأعمال إلى الله أدومها وإن قل, right? That the most beloved of deeds to Allah are أدومها, the consistent ones. وإن قل, even if they're little, even if it's little, don't underestimate it. Keep it consistent. And if you think about it, as the saying goes, pebbles make a mountain. So you collect a pebble, you collect another one, you collect another one. Eventually, you'll have a mountain of pebbles, right? As opposed to if you went all out one day trying to collect as many as possible, you just exhaust yourself and you'll give up. And so that's what we do, and we need to be very careful about that. Now another thing is, don't have an all or nothing mindset. Meaning some people, they will not, if they fall short in any way, or with their goals, they'll just give up. That now that I can't do it perfectly, I'm just going to give up. And again, that doesn't, you know, it doesn't make sense, because again, pebbles make a mountain. If you one day just don't collect pebbles, it's not really going to affect the bigger picture. And also, perfectionism itself is actually one of the spiritual sicknesses, because true perfection only belongs to Allah, right? So what does Allah expect from us? Is it perfection? No, Allah expects progress from us. So every day we're progressing, and we're always, like, we are developing and improving on a long-term basis. Like if we were to zoom out and have a bird's eye view, we see long-term development like that. And so the journey of perfection,
Right.
to see it another way, is it starts in this life, meaning we aim for perfection, but on a day-to-day basis, that comes as progress, as in that's actually what we achieve is progress. So the journey to perfection starts in this life, but it only ends in the next. So only once we step foot in paradise, may Allah make that so for all of us. I mean, only once we set foot in paradise, will we have those qualities where we will no longer tire, we will have no more spiritual sicknesses. We know Allah will purify our hearts before we enter, so on and so forth. So yeah, the journey starts now, only really ends in the next life, but we are liable to at least try. And that comes, like I said, in that looks like progress, right? It should be progress. And again, usually by midway Ramadan, people have, fallen short here and there. They're a bit unhappy that, these goals, I'm not meeting them as I wanted to. That's fine. You have a positive mindset. Remember that Allah doesn't actually reward you based on if you achieve your goals per se. Though goal achievement is really important, right? He achieves you on, sorry, he gives you reward based on your effort towards achieving them, your intentions, and so on and so forth. So that's also really, really important. So if you have fallen short, don't worry. You just collect yourself, be positive, set a new goal, and then carry on. Bismillah, right? And you'll get a lot of barakah in that. Moving on, nutrition and hydration. This is really important, because in the end of the day, we don't worship with just our souls. We worship with our physical bodies. So though we are feeding our souls when we worship, the means, as in the vessel for that, is our body. So you have to take care of the body. So balanced nutrition prevents energy crashes, it stabilizes blood sugar levels, and it improves mental clarity. So a lot of people, again, with Taraweeh and other forms of worship, even if they have like a tahajjud goal, they can't achieve them because they're having these energy crashes because of the type of food they are having. And again, this is just setting yourself up for failure. It's where present you is having absolutely no mercy on the future version of you. Like, I'm going to eat whatever I want right now. And I don't care if future me is absolutely, exhausted and knocked out and has no energy. And that's obviously quite foolish, right? We shouldn't be doing that. And also spreading hydration evenly from iftar to suhoor. So to have lots of water all at once is actually, of course, that's not good for you. And so you should have sustained hydration. And there are many kind of tips people give that are really beneficial. So, carrying a water bottle around with you. Lots of people, like, they have a system in place with Taraweeh. So like every 2 rakahs or every 4 rakahs, because after every 4 rakahs, you're supposed to have a short break if you can make dua or whatever else it is in that time. But every 4 rakahs or 2 rakahs, they take a few sips of water, right? And doing this is really, really important for sustained hydration. We're going to talk a little bit more about this later on, though. So moving on, keeping family ties. So this is also really important. We can't cut off community during Ramadan. Ramadan has a communal element to it, right? And there's benefit in that. So one thing is motivation, right? So when people compete, so I know some families where they actually compete with each other who can read the most Quran. And so they end up reading much more Quran than they normally would have. So again, you can only achieve that kind of motivation when you're with others. And other times it can just be positive influence, right? So we're around others and sometimes we're inspired by seeing what they are doing. Or sometimes we're reminded. Sometimes you can just, because we're human, you just genuinely forget to do certain things. Then you see another person do it and you're reminded. And that's obviously a wonderful thing. It's really important that we keep maintaining those ties. And also, so positive social interactions enhance mental well-being, resilience, and emotional strength. These are wisdoms, right? We should keep family ties regardless, even if we feel like it's not enhancing us in any way, but because it's something that Allah has commanded, right? But naturally, when we obey Allah, there are benefits in that because Allah is all wise and He doesn't command anything that has harm in it. So, this is again really, really important because it will create more blessings in our Ramadan. And moving on, not procrastinating. So, once you've made a plan, you have to follow it as well, right? You can't procrastinate because once you fall short of your plan in one thing, it has a knock-on effect. It's a domino effect. One thing after another starts falling. So you cannot procrastinate. Follow your schedule as closely as possible to ensure you're getting enough time for rest and worship. So let's say you delay praying this for, the women who aren't praying the masjid. If you delay praying Taraweeh, then you'll delay going to sleep. And then you'll delay, maybe you'll just wake up with enough time to eat. And it just everything, it just has a knock-on effect. Everything gets delayed after that. And that's again where it's so important where when you plan in the first place, as we mentioned in the previous slide, that you plan properly and appropriately. Like if you know that after Taraweeh, and especially for women folk, there's a lot of buzz, and sorry, not after sorry, after iftar, there's a lot of buzz, and then there's cleanup and so on. If you know you need some rest after that, then schedule it into your day, right? And then you won't feel deprived, and then you won't feel like, I have to take time out of other things, or I can't follow this plan. If you can't follow the plan, it just means that you need to adjust your plan. That's all it is. So once you've made that ideal plan, as we previously discussed, make sure you follow it. Yeah. Because it will just have a knock-on effect and it will affect absolutely everything. And you don't want that to happen. So some people are asking questions. I've set aside some time to answer questions at the end, inshallah. So we'll do that at the end, inshallah. So I'm not ignoring you. I appreciate your curiosity. Alhamdulillah, we'll do those questions, inshallah, at the end, just to make sure we've given enough time to every topic in the slide. Sorry, in the slides. Okay, so moving on. Sleep routine and napping effectively. So okay, just one moment. Yeah, so sleep routine and napping effectively. The Prophet said, take a midday nap, for indeed shaitan does not nap. And so napping is a sunnah. However, the way you nap makes a big difference. So a lot of people hear napping and then they kind of nap in very ineffective ways that actually causes more problems in the long term. So we're going to discuss how to effectively nap now. So what you want to do is aim for a 20 to 30 minutes power nap. That's why it's a power nap. And, research confirms that shorter naps boost your alertness, and it gives you that energy and mental performance that you're aiming for with a nap. It will give you that. And that's something you find in short naps. Now, the timing is best taken shortly before Dhuhr prayer, around midday. And that's, the sunnah time. And so then you wake up and you can go and pray Dhuhr after that. Now, you want to avoid two types of naps. Firstly, are naps that are after 3 p.m. because if you do that, it will actually interfere with your nighttime sleep. And that, again, it will just be, that will actually cause greater harm, because nighttime sleep is really important, obviously, for your rest, and you don't want to delay that. Also, you want to avoid longer naps because they actually increase fatigue. So the thing with naps is timing is really important. And normally, most people, again, it can differ person to person. So if it doesn't apply to you, just take that into account. That most people actually have a sleep cycle of 90 minutes. So, you go through stages in sleep, and where it's firstly like a short sleep, and then it gets deeper, and that's when people start dreaming and so on and so forth. And that whole process before that cycle ends is about 90 minutes, basically 1.5 hours. And obviously that's not a nap anymore if you're sleeping for 1.5 hours. So, and most people kind of end up napping, like sleeping somewhere in between that. And that's why they wake up feeling like they've been hit by a truck. Like they feel so exhausted. They feel worse than before they went to lie down for the nap. And so that's what it is. They're not timing their naps effectively. So you want to aim for 20 to 30 minutes and no more than that, because that's when you start to go into the deep sleep stage, and you're going to wake up in a time where your brain is not ready to wake up, because it's entered a stage where, your brain was assuming you'd go into a full sleep cycle. So you want to avoid that. So some people say, yeah, but sometimes I've just closed my eyes, I've just gotten a bit sleepy, and then my timer goes off, the 20, 30 minutes is over. The thing is, you'll still find benefit in that, right? So even if you just close your eyes and you've shut off all kind of mental stimulation from your brain, it rests your brain, and it actually does give you a boost of energy. So don't look down on that. Even if you didn't exactly fall asleep, you will still get the benefits of just lying down and closing your eyes, resting your mind and body. You will still find it to be effective. Okay. And obviously, in general, when it comes to sleep, you have to follow your plan. Again, planning is just so important. Like I mentioned, there's no intelligence like planning, but obviously you have to also follow the plan, but you have to aim to go to bed and wake up at consistent times. Your body gets used to it, that's why. And at one point, you don't even have to put in effort. Your body will naturally tire at the times that you've taught it to tire. So yeah, for that, you have to, sleep at consistent times. Don't delay sleep unnecessarily after Tarawih. I mean, there are, some things probably after Tarawih that you do, but don't delay sleep unnecessarily, like a great deal, to make sure that you wake up for suhoor and ideally tahajjud. And so I've not allocated a separate topic for tahajjud, but I'm going to discuss it briefly. Now, it's just really sad because in Ramadan, everybody wakes up at tahajjud time, for their suhoor. And most people, because in general, they have some buffer time because you don't want to eat until the last minute and risk your fast, right? So there's always some buffer time anyway for most people where they're just awake at tahajjud time, not really doing anything, even if it's just 2 minutes. But isn't that all you need though? Isn't 2 minutes all you need to pray tahajjud? Just pray 2 rak'ahs and you've prayed tahajjud and you've done a wonderful thing, right? And most people, I think what it is a lot of people think that tahajjud is just for the, like, the most pious amongst us. Tahajjud is this astounding prophetic feat that, one day in the future I'll achieve tahajjud. But no, it's not. Tahajjud is for you and I, it's for us ordinary people. Like tahajjud is something we need. And you don't need to be at any kind of spiritual state to be deserving of tahajjud, right? So if you're awake at that time, just pray tahajjud and you'll see so much benefit in it. You don't need to kind of identify as, a wali of Allah to have to pray tahajjud. Just pray tahajjud because you're awake at that time and you can. And Allah's given you an invitation, an open invitation, especially if you're awake at that time anyway. And it would just be so unfortunate to ignore that invitation, right? And post Ramadan, we'll talk about post Ramadan in a bit, about having goals for post Ramadan. Tahajjud can be one of your post Ramadan goals, but even if it isn't, at least in Ramadan, make the most of it. Now, even then, if you still feel like, no, it's, my family is pulling in every direction and the children and so on, obviously different people have different circumstances, and you still feel like, I can't pray tahajjud for some reason. But again, please do try. Yeah. But even if you still can't, then at least make dua, right? The Prophet said that whoever gets up at night and says, as in at tahajjud time, and says, La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah. له الملك وله الحمد وهو على كل شيء قدير الحمد لله وسبحان الله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. And then he says, oh Allah, forgive me, Allahumma ighfir li, or makes any dua, then it will be accepted, right? And so we know this. So tahajjud time, though of course, if you're awake, you should be praying tahajjud, it's also characterized by du'as being accepted. And again, this is something that anybody can do, regardless, right? You can at least make some du'a, but people don't. You're awake at tahajjud time. Why would you not make du'a? This is a time when Allah is the closest to his servants. We know that Allah comes to the lowest heaven at that time, and actually asks, who's calling that I may answer? So why not call on him? You're in the best situation, the best time, the best state. The invitation is open for you. So take the opportunity. And that's also really important. Not specifically to do with sleep, but yeah, I just thought it's really important to mention. So moving on now to the next topic of sustained worship. And this is also really important. We shouldn't have a mentality that we'll only worship or will only be good in Ramadan, and then outside of that we'll just abandon everything. I think most people don't anyway. And the fact that you are even able to improve in any way in Ramadan is a sign from Allah that He's given you a gift, and there's clearly some kind of goodness in you that you're able to do that. So you would want to keep as much of that goodness as you can to carry it with you for the next 11 months until the next Ramadan comes, right? So that's what we're going to talk about now. Now, first and foremost is intentions. Intentions are the most important thing in Islam. We don't even get reward unless our intentions are correct. So I can spend 80 years in worship and absolutely exhaust myself, but with the wrong intentions, none of it means anything. Actually, worst case scenario, if I've got bad intentions, that 80 years of worship will actually be recorded as 80 years of sin, right? But putting that aside, another thing is layering intentions and attaching intentions to day-to-day tasks. This is something that you can easily sustain because it takes no extra time, no energy, no change in your routine, nothing. It's just a mental shift. But suddenly you're reaping so many rewards, right? So this is really, really important. Like this is, if you want any life hack, the life hack that you really want to focus on and improve upon and learn more about is the art of making intention. So intentions transform mundane activities and simple survival habits like sleeping, eating, so on, into worship. And so, yeah, set clear intentions. So mentally or verbally set your intention before tasks. This mindful habit reinforces spirituality and focus. So I've just given some examples, but you can of course think of more based on your situation. So cooking, for example, you intend to nourish your family, to earn rewards for feeding fasting people, who will then use that energy to worship. And again, this is something you'll take beyond Ramadan as well, right? Because everyone needs to eat inside Ramadan, outside of Ramadan. Whenever you provide food for people, and applies for men and women. Men when they're grocery shopping, right? or wherever else it is, or earning the money for the for the food, they have these intentions. And women, when they're preparing the food or cooking the food, anyone who's providing food should absolutely have this as their intention. You're feeding Muslims, and they're going to use that, the nourishment they get from that food to worship Allah, which is what we've been created for. You're doing such a wonderful thing, but you just don't intend it. And so because you don't intend it, you unfortunately miss out on reward, right? So that's really, really important to always have that intention. And remember, it doesn't even take a second, it'll take a millisecond, right? As somewhere along the way in the process, you just think to yourself, I'm feeding the servants of Allah. They're going to use the energy from this to worship Him. So that's really important. And suddenly, this simple task you're doing, which you probably saw as a chore, which, has suddenly become this great act of worship. And you'll get so much reward from it. So much reward that you probably can't even count. Because let's say you fed your whole household, um, then and then imagine every person's worship that they do in that entire day, uh, and they got the energy to do that from the food you provided, you get the reward for all of that. So it's so wonderful because it's like in a day you're living multiple lifetimes in terms of reward. Subhanallah. Moving on, cleaning. So intending creating a comfortable space for worship and to encourage angelic presence. And this is again another thing where people just easily lose the chance to get reward. Angels love cleanliness, right? They love it. They're driven away by a lack of cleanliness. They're also incredibly tidy. So so we know, for example, how in Jama'ah, in congregation, men are told to be in absolutely straight lines, without any gaps and so forth. They're commanded to do that because that's actually how the angels stand in front of Allah. So, they're very, you know, they have this very good method with everything, of course, as they obey Allah, but also more important than that, it's cleanliness. And so the average person does this anyway, at some capacity, they're cleaning and tidying. And it creates a better space for you to worship, of course. And remember, it's not just worship as in rote worship, as in salah necessarily, even just creating the environment which allows for family unity, that everyone can sit comfortably together. That is a form of worship, right? To maintain family ties and so on. So all forms of worship, you're facilitating that by creating the ideal environment. And you're also encouraging angelic presence. So usually speaking, when you encourage angels of mercy and so on to come, you're naturally also driving away devils. Like the two don't really mix. And if you drive away the angels, then naturally you're encouraging the presence of devils to come instead. So and when the presence of angels surrounds you, you're more inspired, you have more barakah, so on and so forth, right? And that's really, really important. And these are easy intentions a person can make, as they're cleaning and tidying. And everyone does this to some capacity anyway, right? Moving on, working. So you intend earning a halal income and serving others beneficially. I kind of already touched on that when it comes to like feeding people. If someone's earning money to feed others, but you earn money for, different reasons. And so whilst you're doing it, because people tend to obviously spend a lot of the time of their day doing work, whatever form of work, if they just have that correct intention, suddenly the whole entire thing becomes an act of worship. And if you forget, and that's, again, we're human, we forget. So if you forget to make an intention for an act of worship, you just pause and mentally reaffirm it, right? We'll also touch on this hadith later on, but the Prophet said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالْخَوَاتِيمِ, that actions are according to their endings. So don't worry about it. It's fine. Actions are according to the endings. If you just remember somewhere along the way, inshallah, you'll get the full reward, by Allah's mercy. So moving on, hayd intention. So this is really important for women. Women, obviously, your hayd, or if you follow the Hanafi madhab, is a maximum of 10 days. So if a woman menstruates for 10 days of Ramadan, that's a whole third of Ramadan. And unfortunately, many women have this mentality where it's just a pause from the deen, almost, like it's a pause from Allah. That itself is really problematic. Your hayd is not a pause from Allah. It's a pause from certain types of worship. But you're not on pause from Allah. You're a slave of Allah in hayd, out of hayd, any situation at all times of your life. And that's a really problematic mentality to have, that you're on a break from Allah. How can you be on a break from Allah? How does that even make sense, right? And so we have to be really careful to not think like that. And even the kind of language we use, we should be really careful about it. Even just using terms like break, I don't know, it's up to you. We don't want to go too much into the details of it, but you want to avoid creating that mentality in yourself that you're on a break from Allah. You're never on a break from Allah. Like I said, you're just on a pause with certain forms of worship. So what intentions should you have then? What mentality should you have? So this is what it is. Firstly, obedience is rewarded. So by not fasting, as commanded by Allah, you're fulfilling an act of worship through obedience, gaining reward for following His guidance. In the end of the day, if somebody just for some reason, I don't know, because the change of routine or whatever it is, just doesn't have a hayd in Ramadan, then they'll carry on fasting every day. They'll carry on praying every day. So when a woman stops fasting and praying, why did she do it? Because Allah told her to. And obviously obeying Allah gives you reward. So by you stopping these actions, you get reward for that because you're obeying. So that's really important. Moving on, reward for sincere intentions. So Allah also knows your intentions and how you would have fasted or prayed if not for your hayd. So you still receive the reward as if you had performed them, if you intend so. So it's not necessarily you will by default, you need to intend it, right? And that's where, again, the mentality is so important. If you're over the moon, like, I'm so glad, I'm on this break from the deen, like I said, that doesn't make sense. But if you have that kind of mentality, then unfortunately you won't get the reward, right? And this is, by the way, a principle, a general principle we find in the deen. So there's a hadith where the Prophet said that the person who's sick, and because of their sickness, they can no longer do their normal forms of worship. They'll get the reward of their worship, despite the fact that they couldn't do it. There's another hadith where the one who's traveling, because of his traveling, he can't do his normal worship. He will actually get the full reward of his normal worship. So there's a principle you derive from this, which is that if some uncontrollable circumstance, external circumstance, prevents you from worship, but you would have done it if not for that, you get the full reward of doing it anyway. Because that's Allah. Allah is so merciful. He'll give the reward anyway. So yeah, that's also really important. And finally, it's an opportunity to do more. So this pause allows for focus on other spiritual practices like dhikr, dua, reflection, and seeking knowledge, adding another layer of reward. And so, women kind of go through certain periods of their life where they're incredibly busy. And it's not just women, people in general, right? But just focusing, since the topic right now is specifically for women. And that can mean that they don't often have, especially mothers, they don't often have as much time to give to themselves. But you can't pour from an empty cup. How do you do the tarbiyah and like good upbringing of your children if you've not gone out of your way to develop your own spirituality, right? We know that righteous companionship affects you, and the greatest companionship a child has is with their mother. So if she's righteous, that has a direct impact on them because she's their primary company. And also seeking knowledge, right? And so on and so forth. So this is an opportunity to do those other things. Allah knows why, all the reasons why He, gave different rulings of the deen. But there's always an aspect of benefit in them, like I mentioned. Allah will never command us to do something if it's to harm us. It's just impossible. It can't be the case. So why did Allah command a woman to, for example, not pray and fast during hayd? I mean, you can just right off the bat say, because we know this through biology, that women have less energy and so on in that time, and they actually do suffer from like iron deficiencies and so on and so forth. So perhaps they need to eat. I mean, we can go into that. I mean, we don't really know. We can just say perhaps these are reasons why. But this is definitely a big one. And there are many women I know who absolutely capitalize in this time on focusing on other forms of worship, which they normally can't do. So may Allah give us all tawfiq. I mean, so if because sometimes people are a bit stuck, and so many people have said this to me, oh yeah, but if I can't pray and I can't read Quran, what am I supposed to do then? And so here's a few ideas for you, a few things you can do. And there's just so many things that are really, really beneficial. Um, and so yeah, so dua for self, and that's really important, by the way. We have to make dua for ourselves first. That's the etiquette of dua. You make dua for yourself first and then for others. Istighfar. Seeking forgiveness has so many benefits. SubhanAllah, it removes, it increases your rizq, it can remove calamities. Obviously, it raises your ranks, so on and so forth. Select adhkar, obviously, different forms of dhikr have different benefits. So if something really resonates with you, then perhaps you can focus on that. So for example, saying subhanallah 100 times, the Prophet said it raises your ranks by 1,000 and it eliminates 1,000 sins. But the thing is, these kind of adhkar, like there are different forms of dhikr with different like amounts and so on that have different benefits. So you can choose, in general, though, you want to somewhat diversify your dhikr. You don't want to just focus on one. Like think of it as like a multivitamin, right? You can't just focus on, okay, if I just have my vitamin D, then I'll be okay. But then what? Then you can end up with like iron deficiency or like vitamin C deficiency or whatever else it is, right? So you kind of want to vary at least a little bit. Salawat, so praise upon the Prophet, sallallahu, really, really important. Just coming back to the concept of companionship, the absolute best company we could have is with Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, but obviously, unfortunately, we can't have that. But the next best thing is engaging in obviously learning about him and what he said, and also salawat. It has a massive impact on your character. Many scholars say this. So there's a saying of the scholars that for the one who has no sheikh, then salawat can become his sheikh, meaning if you've got nobody to learn good things from, ideally, we wouldn't want that to be the case for us. So we want to be surrounded by righteous people. Then at least engage yourself in salawat. It'll have an impact on your character. And moving on, we don't have the time to go through all of these in detail, unfortunately. So volunteering time, feeding others, checking in on relatives, dua for others, listening to lectures, listening to Quran. And we're so fortunate with this. This is something I always mention. Like people really don't capitalize on this. If in the past, before the advent of recording and media, you wanted to listen to Quran, you had to go grab like a human being and ask them, request them, can you recite Quran for me? Right? Which in general, not everyone has that time to do that for you, by request. We have it so easy, subhanallah. You can listen to Quran, just whenever you want to, from so, you have the world is your oyster with the number of reciters you have and so on and so forth. So, we're really fortunate in that. Okay, moving on, education, so reading tafsir, reading seerah, just any, any form of seeking beneficial knowledge, and also sharing the knowledge is also really, really beneficial. Practicing gratitude, self-reflection, and giving charity. Now, the thing is, so with respect to a woman on her haid, um, how, the hormones she has in that time, because women's hormones like differ over the monthly cycle, the hormone she has at that time actually makes it more easy for her to be reflective. And that's why some people get, very teary or emotional in that time, but it's because they are actually more reflective in that time. So again, capitalize on it, reflect and giving charity. That's the last point. So moving on, another way to kind of really capitalize on Ramadan and like a habit that you can easily take with you beyond Ramadan is dhikr on the go. So we should really keep our tongue moist with the remembrance of Allah, especially when it's so easy to do whilst you're doing other things, right? Again, these are things that, like I said, they don't take extra time or energy from you. Like you're doing something anyway, so you might as well also do dhikr. And suddenly you're doing such a wonderful form of worship. So these are just some ideas. Tasbih, Fatimi, we know it has many benefits. And again, it's that kind of multivitamin aspect that I just mentioned. Like you're kind of varying, which is good. So that's Allah Akbar 34 times, SubhanAllah 33 times, and Alhamdulillah 33 times. Ideally, you do this after your prayers. Also, it's mentioned before sleep. But again, you don't need to take such massive steps if that is a massive step for you. You don't need to take such massive steps all at once. Just one prayer a day. Just aim to do this. It will benefit you so much, subhanallah. And again, certain prayers, people are more busy, right? So if you're at school, college, work, whatever it is, then maybe the prayers during the day, you don't have as much time, like Dhuhr and Asr, to do other things after you pray. So, you can just pick one prayer where you have time after that, and dedicate yourself to doing some dhikr after that. Pair dhikr with everyday actions. So incorporating all the sunnah du'as is really, really important. This is how you bring Islam to life in your day-to-day. And it's so amazing that Nabi Sallallahu has taught us words for every action, right? For entering the house, leaving the house, for wearing clothes, or for for even drinking milk. There's a dua for that. For when it rains, for the full moon. So we're in the full moon nights right now. There's a dua for everything, right? And you can start off with putting reminders around your house for the basic ones, like dua for entering the toilet or exiting and things like that. Especially if there's children around, things like that, it will help and remind them. It'll remind you and benefit you as well. But this is just one of the best ways you can incorporate the remembrance of Allah throughout your life on a day-to-day basis. These are some other kind of examples. So it's sunnah to say Allah Akbar when ascending, like if you're going upstairs, or so the Sahaba, they're actually going up a mountain. But anyway, just ascending in general, you say Allah Akbar. When you're descending, you say Subhanallah. Um, Again, who doesn't go up and downstairs, probably on a daily basis, and you can easily incorporate these things. Istighfar on the go, or just any dhikr, to be honest, on the go whilst you're traveling, walking, so on. So this is something one of my teachers actually recommended us, and I found it really beneficial. She said that whilst you're cleaning, imagine that your heart is being cleansed the way you clean your environment whilst you're doing istighfar. Because that's what seeking Allah's forgiveness. It's purifying your heart. And it's very literal, because we know, like, there's actual dark spots that develop on our spiritual heart when we sin. And istighfar eliminates that. It brings the nur and the light of Allah back into our hearts. And it's really satisfying. So imagine you've got a lot of, I don't know, a sink full of dishes, and it's an absolute mess, and it's, dirty. As you clean and you do istighfar, you can imagine that that's actually something very similar is happening to your spiritual heart, subhanAllah. Um, Anyways, moving on. Listening to dhikr. This is something I've found to be very beneficial personally. So when you're kind of engaged in certain tasks, so if you're, I don't know, cooking or cleaning or whatever it is, sometimes you just forget. Like, you're just so focused on the task, you just stop doing dhikr. So you create a dhikr playlist, and this ensures that you keep up that dhikr. So I've created a playlist. I've recommended other people to as well. And again, this is also so wonderful. Like, people in the past didn't have access to these kinds of things. They would have to get a real human to come and recite to them. So we're really fortunate in that. And you can get absolutely, any form of dhikr. So there's like salawat on repeat. There's like the dua of Yunus alayhi salam. And there's many different du'as and dhikrs and so on that you can find on YouTube, for example. You can just play it, and it should keep you consistent, keep you focused. Now, this is really important to keep in mind, though, that the greatest dhikr is your salah, right? And you're going to, pray in Ramadan and outside of Ramadan, right? So this is something that you have to really improve upon, right? So if you're praying salah, but at no point did you think about Allah, that's really problematic, because salah is, like I said, the greatest dhikr. It's supposed to be a constant state of thinking of Allah. Um, just completely normal things become haram to do in salah, because your focus is supposed to be that your focus is only on Allah. Like, you can't speak to anybody. Speaking is, obviously completely permissible to do. Normally speaking, in salah you can't speak, and so on and so forth. There are obviously many things you can't do in salah, and that all of that is to increase your khushu', your focus and humility in front of Allah whilst you pray. So again, just working on that, because you're not necessarily going to take Taraweeh forward with you after Ramadan. Obviously, it's a prayer that's specific to Ramadan, but you will take your 5 daily salahs with you. And so if you can improve the quality of that, if you can make it so that you're actually remembering and thinking of Allah more during that, then that's going to impact your day, so much, subhanAllah. And if you're actively fighting your nafs, like your nafs is reminding you of your shopping list, or who said what to who, or what else it is, the kind of things that shaitan reminds us of in salah, and you're actively fighting that, the scholars say this is actually a form of jihad. You get reward for it if you're actively trying to focus. May Allah grant us all tawfiq. I mean, moving on, feeding the body to feed the soul. So this is related to what was mentioned in an early slide about, food and hydration being really important. Um, the body must be nourished appropriately to sustain worship. It shouldn't be undernourished or overfed, as in both are bad, right? Both are bad. So if you're eating lots of junk and your body's being sapped of what it needs, like you're deficient in different vitamins, whatever else it is, obviously that will affect your worship, right? And also the opposite, overfed. Digestion is actually the most difficult thing to do for the body. It's the most difficult thing. So naturally, when you're digesting food, your body takes away, it basically puts all focus on that. And that's why you don't think as clearly, you're not as alert, and so on and so forth when you're digesting. So if you overfeed yourself, you're naturally going to be sapped of energy and everything else over that time period, which is obviously at iftar onwards. You have tarawih and everything else. Even sleep quality reduces. So again, during sleep, your mind, recovers itself. And so if your body is busy digesting, heavy, oily, these kind of foods or excessive food that you've given it early in the day, you will also not sleep as well. And again, it just will have a knock-on effect on everything after that, and you really want to avoid that. So right off the bat, dates and water first. This is so, so beneficial, right? I like all the sunnahs of our Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Is a timeless sunnah that replenishes energy immediately. A lot of people don't know this. They think it's just the water hydrating them, but no. Dates contain essential electrolytes. They contain potassium and magnesium that aid hydration. So these two being paired together is so beneficial. So please do so. Moving on, there are other types of superfoods. Now, I've listed some here, but there are obviously so many superfoods. Allah's given us so much, subhanAllah. But these are things that these are just some ideas, I suppose, that can be really beneficial. A lot of people I know drink more coconut water because coconut water also has those, electrolytes and things. It hydrates you very well. Watermelon also. And then things like bananas, avocados, yogurt, oats, and eggs, these are really, really beneficial. It's also not difficult for the body to digest these things. So they digest them well without taking so much energy from your other functions, the other bodily functions. Okay, so moving on, balanced meals. So you want to balance your meals as well. You want to have proteins, complex carbs, and healthy fats. And high sugar and fried foods cause energy crashes. We mentioned this earlier on when it came to the, planning effectively. So, and this is also for people who feel a lot of hunger whilst fasting. Usually the case is that they're not really having much protein, because protein actually is very, very beneficial for staving off hunger. And again, coming back to eggs is, just a great all-rounder and very easy to eat. Yeah, there are many scholars, if you read their biographies, they would have eggs for suhoor. And there's this one scholar, unfortunately I've forgotten who it was, but he would just have boiled eggs. And so what it was he was so busy with tahajjud during that time, he didn't want to take time out of his tahajjud time. He wanted to reduce that as much as possible. So he'd be engaged in prayer until like the last 5 minutes, and then he'd just have a few boiled eggs, like just by itself, and water. And that was his suhoor. Obviously, he did that to obviously maximize that time. You don't need to do that, but the point is that, we want to think about okay, we'll talk about that later on actually. That's actually a separate topic about how food and time, and how the more time we take to eat, the less time we have for other things. So we'll talk about that later on. But the point is, we want to eat healthy foods, healthy, whole foods that aren't going to give us energy crashes and isn't going to take so much effort for our body to digest at the detriment of our sleep and our energy and our mental clarity. So on odd nights, remember that the night starts from Maghrib. So have an iftar that is nutritious but doesn't take too long to eat or clean up from, right? Such as wraps, sandwiches, smoothies, whatever it is. I'm sure, some people have, amazing ideas, but you want to really minimize how long it takes to eat and clean up as well. For women folk, if they've got so much clean up to do afterwards, that will actually cut out time from their worship. So that's also something you want to keep in mind. Moving on, aiming to maintain. This is really important. A sign of an accepted Ramadan is change that takes place in your life after Ramadan has ended, right? That's how you know your Ramadan's been accepted, if there's something in your life that's shifted. It could be internal, external, whatever it is. So how do you do that? How can you ensure that this happens? Firstly, habit stacking. This is so beneficial. It's been proven just in so many studies how if you attach new spiritual habits to existing habits, it helps you solidify them. So for example, if you want to do more dhikr, attach the dhikr to something you're already doing anyway, like your salah, right? You're already in a habit, let's say, of praying salah. So attach dhikr to one of your salahs, and it will become so much easier. Those two habits kind of merge into each other and become one habit. And it's so much easier for your brain to pick up on. That's just one example. Uh, Timing worship well. So this is also a really nice tip I got from someone, where she said that choose slots in your day for your worship that would also work outside of Ramadan, so you can continue that habit in that time, right? Now we know that that's not always impossible with everything, because our Ramadan timetables tend to be very different, like with eating and everything. But I'm sure you have a goal, or well, you can have a goal at least of something you want to take outside of Ramadan. So try to time that action in a time where you can actually just carry on naturally after Ramadan. And so obviously that depends on on your timetable and what the goal is. So intend to take at least one habit forward, right? So if you leave Ramadan with even one aspect of your life being better, then you would have had a successful Ramadan. So at least one goal. And if you think about it, you might think, yeah, but, and again, people with an all or nothing mindset, they would look down on this. They say, yeah, but one goal, like why? Like I want my time outside of Ramadan to be like in Ramadan. You have to be realistic. And also imagine in 10 Ramadans, that would have been 10 goals. 10 goals that you've achieved that's transformed your day-to-day life, you'll be a completely different human being, right? So don't underestimate that one goal. Yeah. Have that one habit, one goal where you've made up your mind and you made dua to Allah. Allah, give me tawfiq, give me the ability, open the doors. I want to take this gift that you've given me with me outside of Ramadan. And inshallah it will happen. And like I said, over time, it will change your life. Imam Nawawi said, persist in what you started in Ramadan, even if it's little, because continuous small deeds build a strong and lasting connection with Allah. And that's the most important thing, right? Don't underestimate or belittle the small things. Now, because we're talking about post-Ramadan, I want to touch on Eid day and not forgetting your progress. Like we said before, the Prophet said actions are according to their endings. So you want to end your Ramadan in a beautiful day. And obviously, Ramadan ends with Eid al-Fitr. And you want that day to be beautiful, right? So here's, some sunnahs. Just briefly, there are Eid sunnahs, which is bathing and you wearing your best clothes. Not necessarily new clothes, but yeah, your best clothes. Eating something sweet, preferably dates, before going to Eid prayer. Giving sadaqat al-fitr. This is so important. You give sadaqat al-fitr before that. Now, for many of us, we don't have like poor people just around and about. Like we're not going out and seeing beggars everywhere and so on, that we're then giving our sadaqat al-fitr to, which is kind of the context here. So you want to give your sadaqat al-fitr probably a few days before, if you're giving it in another country, to ensure that those people have because essentially your sadaqat al-fitr is an Eid gift for poor people, so it should reach them on Eid, right? So ideally that's what you want to do. You want to make sure that you give your sadaqah in good timing so that it reaches these people on Eid, right? Because it's not just the whole Muslim ummah deserves to celebrate. It's not just us. It's not just us people with the money, right? And so yeah, we have to make sure we pay it. Sorry, I forgot to mention, we have to make sure we pay it and also pay it in a good time. Also, greeting others warmly, smiling on Eid is a sunnah. Smiling to others is in general a sunnah anyway, but I remember the first time I read in a fiqh book, it had like a list of all the sunnahs of Eid, and then it included smiling. Like smiling at others is just a specific sunnah for Eid. And then you find people who on Eid day, they're not bothered, they're in their pajamas, they're miserable, and they're saying Eid's so boring. If Eid is boring, it's because you haven't put in the effort to actually make it enjoyable, right? So, make it not boring. Like you take the initiative, and at the very least, the primary, you can at least start with the mentality. Just smiling at others, congratulating others on, praying for an accepted Ramadan. These things are so, so important to yeah, to have that kind of mentality that this is a joyous, because it is a joyous occasion, and we should show that. And so yeah, that's really important. We shouldn't be grumpy on Eid. Okay, moving on. Continue some of your worship, at least one on Eid day. Like on Eid day itself, make sure you continue something. This is really important because if you're, Eid day, if you, abandon everything all at once, it can completely derail you. Um, and it makes it much less likely you're going to take forward, those beautiful habits that you've developed. So this is just an example. You don't need to do this. Imam Abu Hanifa, we're going to talk about the feats of the pious at the end, inshallah, but he used to complete 2 khatams a day, every day in Ramadan. And he would actually complete another 2 khatams on Eid day as well. So, and there are actually hadith about the virtue of worship on the night of Eid. So, when the moon is sighted, and obviously that evening you don't pray Taraweeh because Ramadan's over, you should still do some worship because that is Eid night, and there's a virtue in worshipping on Eid night. Yeah, and again, you can easily, make these family traditions, make it, exciting, and create long-lasting habits like this. Because you're not praying Taraweeh that night. Most people, they get kind of like a whiplash on, when Ramadan ends in the evenings, because it's like, whoa, subhanallah, I suddenly have so much time now that I'm not doing 20 rak'ahs or, so on of Taraweeh. But, why go from, 100% to zero? Do something still, right? Whilst your soul is so eager to actually do ibādah, do something. There's a virtue in that. Okay, and also just general things to do with character and social etiquettes, visit family and relatives regardless of past issues or disputes. We shouldn't let any kind of past issues get in the way of enjoying family ties. It's just really, really problematic for our iman. Visiting people who have no one to celebrate with, like elderly, converts, new Muslims. That's also really, really important. Again, we have this mentality that it's not just us who deserves to celebrate. Other people do as well. The poor people, people who are alone, so on. We should think of them too. Should be generous and give gifts, especially to children, without obviously extravagance or imitating non-Muslims. There's this kind of trend now of imitating certain things that non-Muslims do. And so Christmas, for example, has become a very, very just this commercial night. Like it's just a nightmare of consumerism, right? And we don't want Eid to become like that, right? So we have to be kind of careful about that. So make Eid memorable for children through kindness, joy, and special activities, right? The best thing you can give your children are memories, right? One day you have to leave your children behind. So, give them memories, lasting memories of these joyous occasions, to reinforce their positive Islamic identity. And also avoid sins in general, so wastefulness, free mixing, music, exposing one's adornment to non-mahrams, and all actions that contradict the spirituality built during Ramadan. So that leads us to our next topic, which is the last 10 days. And I'm sure everyone says it, Ramadan went so fast, can't believe it's halfway through. But don't worry. If you felt like, I've kind of slipped along the way, I've not really met, the expectations I had for myself, I've not met them, and, I've not made the most of these. Don't worry, because the gem, the crown of Ramadan is yet to come. It's the last 10 days, right? And the last 10 days also has its crown, which is Laylatul Qadr, which we're also going to talk about. So don't worry, you're all here, subhanAllah. If you're here, you're not here by coincidence. Allah ordained for you to be here. Allah, made the circumstance work out, and, made it such that, He inspired you to be here. These are all good signs, Allah wants khair for us. So Allah grant us tawfiq. Let's jump into the topic. So firstly, general blessings of Ramadan. Just a quick overview to, again, just like to just ground yourself and kind of like, yeah, just have that motivation from the get-go that if an average day of Ramadan has all these blessings, then what would Laylatul Qadr be like, right? So let's talk about the general blessings of Ramadan. Firstly, forgiveness. So whoever observes the fast of Ramadan out of sincere faith and hoping to attain Allah's rewards, then all his past sins will be forgiven. That's so amazing, subhanAllah. Like, and there's many other kind of similar hadith that, there's another hadith about Taraweeh, that the one who stands in prayer in Ramadan, again, out of sincere faith and hoping to attain rewards, then all his past sins will be forgiven. We're going to do about Laylatul Qadr, that the one who spends Laylatul Qadr in worship, then all his past sins will be forgiven. So this is amazing, because if you're fasting, with the conditions, all your past sins will be forgiven. If you're praying Taraweeh, all your past sins will be forgiven. If you meet basically worship on Laylatul Qadr, all your past sins will be forgiven. So, your past sins are being forgiven times 3. It's like nur ala nur ala nur. It's just so amazing. Will you leave Ramadan with any sins left on your back? So, subhanAllah. Well, ideally, I mean, realistically, you wouldn't. Like, it's just amazing that so many things eliminate your sins in Ramadan. So definitely, this is just an amazing time to just capitalize on that and attaining the forgiveness of Allah. Easier worship. So when the month of Ramadan starts, the gates of heaven are open, the gates of hell are closed, and the devils are chained. So one of my teachers, Mufti Abdul Rahman, he actually said that if you want to get into hell in Ramadan, you'll have to break in. Because how are you going to get in when the gates are closed? So obviously, but it's true. It's just so amazing that the opportunities to get into Jannah are just they're just beyond. We can't even put a number on it in terms of how many more opportunities there are, and the opportunity to go to hell is just so difficult. Subhanallah. So yeah. Moving on, accepted du'as. There are 3 whose supplications are not rejected. The first being the fasting person when he breaks his fast. And again, like I said, another thing, because I mentioned it before, but also the Muslim Ummah as a whole tends to be awake at tahajjud time, which is another time where your du'as are accepted, right? So again, we want to also make the most use of that. And obviously it being the month of revelation, the month of Ramadan in which the Quran was revealed. So we naturally will have we should have a closer connection to the Quran. Now, coming to Laylatul Qadr, so in Surah Qadr, Allah tells us, He says that indeed it is we who sent this Quran down on the night of power. And what will make you realize what the night of power is? The night of power is better than 1,000 months. That night, the angels and the spirit here is referring to Jibril alayhi salam, descend by the permission of their Lord for every decreed matter. It is all peace, as in it's all peaceful until the break of dawn. So when is this night? So we know this night of power is so wonderful, but when is it? So the Prophet said, search for the night of power in the odd nights of the last 10 days of Ramadan. So, the 21st, 23rd, 25th, 27th, and 29th. Now, a lot of people, they have, through study and so forth, learned about certain opinions that certain Sahaba had, that the Laylatul Qadr is the 27th night. I think it's just kind of, in the Muslim community, this is well known that it's a strong opinion. And so, unfortunately, what many people tend to do is just single out the 27th night for worship. The thing is, though, that's wonderful that, you're educating yourself and you learnt these things. But in the end of the day, the Prophet didn't tell us, Allah Himself did not tell us which night it is. And actually, there are 40 different opinions on when Laylatul Qadr is. You'll be astounded because you think, how can there be 40? There should only be 5, right? But no, there are 40, and you'd be really surprised to know. And, we don't know. What if we're wrong? What if you've put your 100%, like you went full blast in on the 27th night, you put in everything, and poor you've just missed the night because it already passed on the 23rd, What if? Because we don't know, right? We don't really know. It's not set in stone. We don't have those kind of clear, explicit answers. So don't do this. It's, you could really miss out. And we don't want to be that kind of person who puts in no effort and just on that one night we put in everything. So you pace yourself so you're consistent throughout the odd night. It's really important. So what are the virtues of the night? Firstly, reward is 1,000 months of worship equates to approximately 83 years and 4 months. However, Laylatul Qadr is better than that. So if I just quickly go back, if you look at the verse, because some people I think it's just an honest mistake. They say it's equivalent to 83 years and 4 months. Like Laylatul Qadr is 1,000 months worth of worship. It's not, it's better. So if you look at the verse, the night of power is better than 1,000 months, meaning Allah's given us this number to show us how great it is, but actually it's an inconceivable number. We don't know. It's actually far more than that. Now, you tell me, I mean, the average person, if you live till 83 years and 4 months, you're very fortunate. Subhanallah, that's a long life. And if you spent that in worship, you're one of the most fortunate people on earth, right? If you, as in, spent all those years, obeying Allah and trying to get closer to Him, so on and so forth. You live an entire lifetime in that one night, subhanallah. But it's actually more than that, because it's more than 83 years and 4 months, like I mentioned. And imagine if multiple Ramadans, you get multiple Laylatul Qadrs, you would have lived, subhanAllah, thousands upon thousands of years by the end of your life, in terms of reward, anyway. So yeah, we have to make the most of it, right? Next, destiny decreed. We know that a destiny for the coming year is decreed, your life, death, provision, etc. So we would want to be in a good state when that is happening. So all the angels are given their tasks for the next year. So it's even mentioned, even like who's going to go to Hajj and who's not going to go to Hajj. That is decreed. Like everything is decreed, right? So, spend that time, perhaps making dua for what you want the next year to look like. Angelic presence, the angels, including Jibril alayhi salam, descend to the earth. They look for believers to give salam to, so it's mentioned in hadith, is except those who drink wine or eat pork. So other than certain like major sins, the average believer, the angels will go around giving them salam. And this is something I tell my younger students who maybe have difficulty keeping their rooms clean and so on. But if you're a mother, say these things to your children, which is imagine Jibril alayhi salam is coming to your room that day, right? Would you want like a bin that's overflowing and there's a mess and it's smelling not good and so on and so forth? Is that the kind of state you want your room to be when the angels come, right? And we know it's a very real thing. And by the way, the scholars also say that Jibril alayhi salam, he only descends on earth now once a year on Laylatul Qadr. Obviously before, he was the angel of revelation, so he would come down for revelation, but of course that's not happening anymore. The revelation is complete, so he only comes down once a year, which is on Laylatul Qadr, to go and give salam to all the believers. So it's just an amazing thing, subhanallah, right? Sins forgiven. So the person said, whoever stands in prayer on the night of power out of faith and seeking reward from Allah, he will be forgiven of whatever preceded of his sins, right? So it's just so many virtues to this night, and we want to make the most of all of them. So you want to make a checklist to make sure that you're doing a bit of everything. So for women, you want to create a checklist for Haid and non-Haid days, right? So you should have a checklist for when you're praying and reading Quran, and when you're not praying and not reading Quran, right? And there are many, again, like there are so many forms of worship you can be involved in even when you're not on your Haid. And you want to try to vary worship so you don't tire yourself out, because the soul tires easily if you're just engaged in prayer for hours and hours. The average person will get tired from that. So instead of doing that, just kind of vary it in the first place so that you can keep it up. And also you should recite this specific dua for Laylatul Qadr, which is Allahumma innaka afuun, oh Allah, you are the pardoner. Tuhibbul afwa, you love to pardon. Fa'fu anni, so pardon me. And even the dua itself is so beautiful. Like Allah loves to pardon. So if you have a Rabb who loves to pardon, like he's so happy to pardon. He loves to pardon. Like he can't wait. We know that he can't wait. As in, he's very excited. He's very excited for his servants to turn back to him. Then why wouldn't we turn to him? Subhanallah. We want our aim to be that we leave Ramadan on a completely clean slate with no sins remaining. May Allah grant us all of that. I mean, so these are some worship ideas. for Laylatul Qadr. You can, like, I don't know, take a screenshot. I'm not really going to go through all of them, but ultimately you have to see what works for you, right? And you want to see also kind of where you're maybe lacking, and then kind of work on that. You also, yeah, everything is kind of specific to every person. So moving on, i'tikaf. So the last 10 days are characterized by sunnah i'tikaf. There's no other sunnah i'tikaf. There's like there are other forms of i'tikaf, but the sunnah i'tikaf is only in the last 10 days of Ramadan. So what is i'tikaf? I'tikaf literally means devotion, but uh, you know, it in the sense of this worship, it means to stay in the masjid for men or home for women with the intention of worship, as in any form of worship. So the ruling is that it's sunnah mu'akkada, it's an emphasized sunnah during the last 10 days of Ramadan. Where will it take place? For men, it's the masjid area where congregation is held, and for women, it's the dedicated prayer area at home. So you can't do itikaf like in your living room. I mean, why would you? Like, you're not really going to be able to concentrate on your varied forms of worship in a communal area. So yeah, it's a dedicated prayer area at home. For most people, that's their bedroom. The duration is for the entire last 10 days. So if it's any less than 10, then it will be nafal itikaf. So, for some women, they want to do itikaf, but they can't because their haid comes at one point in during the 10 days. That's fine. You can still do nafal itikaf, and that's why the next slide is dedicated to that. Sorry, no, you can't do nafal itikaf. Sorry, you can do other forms of nafal worship. Sorry, because it's yeah, so it's Allah's will, right? If you can't do itikaf, it's fine. You can do other forms of worship. So what do you do? Well, in itikaf, just any worship, anything. So prayer, Quran, zikr, seeking knowledge, just any beneficial speech. It could be teaching on anything, right? And of course, eating and sleeping. You do spend your entire time in that place. What are the invalidators? It's leaving the place without necessity, marital intimacy related acts, and menstruation or postnatal bleeding for women. Um, so then there's nafil itikaf. So a lot of people, they can't dedicate the entire last 10 days for different reasons. But you can do nafil itikaf. So this is an optional spiritual retreat anytime during the year, right? So it's not just specific to Ramadan, just any time during the year. For men, it's again the masjid area where congregation is held, and for women, it's a dedicated prayer at the home. Now, this is one of the instances, I think, where women have it so much easier. Like, why would you not do nafil itikaf, right? For a man to do nafil itikaf, he has to go to the masjid in that specific, it has to be a masjid. It can't just be like a community hall where people pray or something like that. He has to be a masjid, and he has to go there. And then when he's there, whilst he's praying or reading Quran or whatever it is, he intends nafil itikaf. For women, your usual dedicated prayer area, let's say it's your bedroom. How often in a day do you go to your bedroom, or can you go to your bedroom, right? It's just so easy, subhanAllah. It's just no effort almost. And why would you not do it? So I remember years back when I first learned about itikaf, it was in my first year of Alimiyah. I on a post-it wrote itakifi, like going to itikaf, and I stuck it like in my room. And it's just so easy. You just intend itikaf with what you're already doing anyway, and suddenly you're doing, instead of one act of worship, you're doing two. Because if you're gonna pray there anyway, why don't you just pray and also intend nafil itikaf? Because by the way, it's for any duration of time. So if you look here, duration is a brief moment is sufficient. So the time it takes to say subhanallah is sufficient for your itikaf, right? So if you're gonna pray there anyway, just also intend itikaf. And that's it. Now, instead of doing one form of worship, you're doing two. If you're gonna read Quran there anyway, then intend itikaf. If you're gonna, I don't know, study is something Islamic, watch Islamic videos even, or read an Islamic book, whatever else it is, then also just intend itikaf. Obviously, if you're in that space though, right? It's not just anywhere in the house, only in that where you usually pray in your house. And yeah, this is just really easy to do and really easy to maximize on. And the invalidators are the same as Sunnah Itikaf. Now, I know with Itikaf, there are so many scenarios and situations. People tend to have a lot of questions. Unfortunately, that's beyond the scope of what I can offer today, because we want to do an overview for everything for Ramadan. So, this just for more details on Itikaf, the rules of read the book The Rules of Itikaf by Mufti Taqi Uthmani. yeah, the last chapter in that book is also just specific itikaf with respect to women. So you'll get lots of all the details you need, you'll get there, inshallah. So moving on to the next topic, which is taqwa, how to deepen taqwa and spirituality. Why is this a topic? Is because in the Quran, in Surah Baqarah, Allah says, "O believers, fasting is prescribed for you as it was for those before you, but why? So perhaps you'll become mindful of Allah." Right? So it's لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. You could translate this as mindfulness of Allah, God consciousness, awareness of Allah, so on and so forth, right? And this is why we've been told to fast, is so we become more aware of Allah. So, how, what's the link between these things? How does fasting increase taqwa? So, when even the halal becomes haram, like, eating food and drink, forget halal is compulsory. Like, you can't deprive yourself of food and drink just for no reason, right? You'll be harming your body, that would be sinful. So, something that is normally compulsory to do, well, of course, it's halal, becomes haram, right? Let alone the haram things, of course, that we should be staying far, far away from those things, especially in Ramadan, right? So yeah, when even the halal becomes haram, Ramadan is the ideal time to train the nafs, which is the base self. It's the animalistic side to us that just wants, without kind of sense, right? Um, so it just wants to eat more and just wants to sleep more and so on and so forth, right? Also, ego is based on that. Like, it just wants to protect itself at any cost. And so this is obviously really problematic for our spiritual selves, because we're not animals and we're not supposed to act animalistically. And Ramadan is the best time to differentiate our animal selves, or animalistic sides, let's say, the nafs, from our spiritual selves, our higher selves. And obviously, it's only the soul that we take forward with us. In paradise, we don't have this body. We have, well, may Allah take us there. I mean, but in paradise, everyone's given like elite bodies, right? So nobody like sweats anymore, or like so on and so forth. But anyways, so our soul is what we need to nourish, is actually who we are. It's what we take forward with us into the next life. So yeah, the more one abstains from sin, the more one's taqwa increases. So Imam Ghazali rahimahullah categorized those who fast into three. There are those who fast from food and drink. That's your average person. If a person only does this and does every sin, other than that, that's obviously really problematic. That's not, and we know, the Prophet said that, how many are there that, well, essentially they deprive themselves of food and drink, and all they gain from it is hunger and thirst, right? I mean, all they gain from it is hunger and thirst, right? Meaning they've got no reward whatsoever. They've just physically deprived themselves and experienced some difficulty, and that's it. And that's obviously, we don't want our fasts to be like that. That's a fast that's not accepted, of course. Then there are those who fast from the sins of the eyes, tongue, ears, and the entire body. Now, this is what we're talking about, an accepted fast, where they're not backbiting and lying, looking at inappropriate things, or just any kind of harm in any way. And then finally, this is the next level, which we all should aim for, are those who fast from all worldly thoughts and concerns or distractions. And in general, it tends to cut back. Well, it should anyway. In Ramadan, you just think less about the dunya, just naturally, because you're more focused in your salah and your Quran and your spiritual goals. And so at the highest spiritual stage, a person will just, it's not the fact that they stop living in the world. They're living in the world, but as they see the world, they are only experiencing Allah. So everything they're seeing is just in relation to Allah. So the dunya ceases to be what it is anymore. And everything around them, they are connecting it to the next life, and to the unseen, subhanallah. So the month of Ramadan is a spiritual camp where one continuously deprives the material self in order to nourish one's immaterial self, the soul. And that's how we kind of increase in taqwa. Now, even then, even after discussing this, right, because here we just understand that it means to increase in God consciousness, right? We understand, right? But then I still get asked all the time, but how do you actually do this? Or how do I know I'm doing this? How do I know I'm doing it right? How do I know my taqwa is increasing? So that leads us to the next point, which are the two components of taqwa. So taqwa comprises of two things. and they happen in cycles. So firstly is experiential tawheed. This is where you single Allah out in your experience of life. So everything you experience, you think back to, why did Allah allow that to happen? Why did Allah decree for this to be? How am I supposed to react? What am I supposed to learn? So on and so forth, right? So this means to know and experience Allah's qualities in one's life as applied knowledge. So it's not just knowledge that's just in your head and it has no practical purpose in your real life. No, it actually comes to life. You bring it to life as you experience, things during your day. So there are two key ways to do this, because Allah's quality is split into two. So there are some of Allah's names which are specific to Him, like As-Samad, the self-sufficient. We're not self-sufficient in any way, shape, or form. We are reliant on our parents to exist. Right now, we need oxygen to survive, not to mention food, sleep. We need all these things, right? So only Allah is As-Samad, the self-sufficient. He's Al-Awwal and Al-Akhir. So He's the first and the last, meaning that means He's basically timeless, right? Because He's beyond the concepts of space and time. So He's timeless. He doesn't have a beginning and an end the way we do, right? That also only applies to Allah. So these names of Allah have no application to us. But through these names, we appreciate Allah and we dedicate ourselves to Him. Because nothing in life lasts besides Allah. So why are you going to dedicate your life to anything besides Him, right? Like everything and everyone will leave you and forget you, like willingly or unwillingly, right? Except Allah. So when you see these qualities, you realize that it should make you sincere, and it'll make you want to exclusively worship Him because you see His value as opposed to all of creation. Then there are the qualities of Allah where, obviously, though we can never compare because His qualities are infinite, right? We actually share in that, as in Allah's given us some components or some parts of that. So they are, you could say, human applicable qualities. So for example, Allah's mercy, Allah's justice, right? So Allah is Ar-Rahim, He's merciful and He loves to see us be merciful. He's Al-Adl, the just, He loves to see us be just, so on and so forth, right? So these qualities, we want to inculcate them into ourselves, right? In our character, in our daily interactions with others. And this is what you'd call experiential tawheed, where you're actually experiencing Allah in your day-to-day life. It's not just like an abstract concept, just like information that's in your mind. It's actually coming to life in your day-to-day. So that's the first component, to know Allah properly, right? An applied form of knowledge. The second component is the effect that has on you. So now that you know this, now that you've noticed and you're acknowledging Allah's qualities, what are you going to do about it? You should transform your akhlaq. Your character should transform. So having that knowledge should change and affect you, your will, your intentions, and your entire way of life, right? And so then you live life in this cycle of, oh, I noticed this, or I've just no. By the way, even with people, if a person is incredibly merciful to you, of course, you'd appreciate that. But that's just a reflection of the mercy Allah put in them. So again, it's all going back to Allah, that subhanallah, this is actually Allah's mercy, right? So that's what taqwā is, therefore living life mindfully in a cycle of seeing and acknowledging Allah's signs. So everything you see, everything that happens to you, you relate it back to Allah, and then you react accordingly. So what am I supposed to do about that now? That, I love that people be merciful to me. I love to receive from Allah's mercy. Perhaps I should be merciful too, So that is the second component of taqwā. So I'm going to give you some examples. I'm going to zoom through this because there's a lot. The first is, so Allah is As-Sami. What will this lead to? This will lead to more mindful speech, right? So you avoid lying, gossiping, harsh, vulgar words, etc. Because when you know He's hearing, again, that should have an effect on you. Knowing Allah is Ar-Razzaq, the constant provider. So this leads to increased gratitude and recognizing that, these daily blessings that we take for granted, He gives and He can also take away, right? So when we receive something, even from a person, we know that ultimately Allah gave it to us through that person, right? Because He's the provider, He's the ultimate provider. All provision, doesn't matter through which avenue it comes to us from, ultimately actually came from Allah. Okay, knowing Allah is Al-Basir. So you have this knowledge, what you're going to do about it, it will lead to greater discipline, avoiding sins, so on and so forth. Knowing that Allah is Al-Wali, He's your protecting friend, He's your only, He's your true friend, right? This will increase your love for Him, right? Naturally, you want to hang out with your friends, right? because you like them, you love them, right? So if Allah is your greatest friend of all, you naturally want to seek him out more. Knowing Allah is al-Baqi, he's the everlasting and permanent. So this increases your detachment from the dunya, because the dunya is not everlasting. It's very temporary. Like I said, everything and everyone will leave you willingly or unwillingly, except Allah, right? And again, that shouldn't be something that makes you feel depressed. It's a wonderful thing. It's so amazing that we have someone, basically Allah, someone who will never leave you. Subhanallah. You can, and that's obviously the best thing about Jannah, that Allah's presence. Allah gives salam to the residents, so, and also we get to see Allah. These are the best things about paradise. Okay, knowing Allah is Al-Hakam, the judge, and Al-Ghafur, the forgiving. So again, obviously this leads to increased guilt for sins, but also a continuous drive to want to seek forgiveness, to want to improve. You never put yourself down. You never think that you're beyond hope. There's no such thing. When we have an all-forgiving Lord, you're never beyond hope. Okay, knowing Allah is Al-Alim and Al-Hakim. This is really important. If you truly know this, you'll increase your patience and trust in his divine plan as it unfolds throughout your day. So if something didn't work out, instead of getting frustrated, you know that Allah, who knows far better than you, he understands far better than you, he's just everything far better than you, decided after having all that knowledge and all that wisdom that this thing should be like that, meaning that plan should fall through and this thing shouldn't work out, whatever it is. When you truly understand that, Alhamdulillah, like, wow, that's so amazing. Allah, perhaps Allah's protected me or whatever it is. There's some greatness in this, though I don't know. But because I trust Allah and because I acknowledge these qualities of His, I'm going to be patient. So, and moving on, just a few more. Knowing Allah is Al-Kareem, this should increase your generosity. And also, it gives you that confidence that it doesn't matter how much you give, Allah will give back more. Because we know sadaqah only increases your wealth, right? Knowing Allah is Al-Hadi. This is another one where like people say it, but then in their life, it's not really showing. So they'll say, yeah, I believe Allah is the guide. But then if you truly believe that, it would motivate you to frequently pray istikhara. Like istikhara is not like a once in a lifetime thing, just like when you're getting married or just when you're going for that, I don't know, big job change or something, you do istikhara. Istikhara should be a daily, or at least almost daily thing, where you just seek Allah's khair, and you seek for his guidance in your even day-to-day decisions. Also Quranic reflection, like you want to know what has Allah said, what is the Islamic view on this, and therefore you seek beneficial knowledge. Someone who truly believes Allah is Al-Hadi will do these things all the time, because they'll know no one can advise them better than Allah. No one can guide them better than him. He's Al-Qadir, so this leads to focusing more on your actions rather than worrying excessively about outcomes, which are only in Allah's control. Like you can put 101% effort into something and it still doesn't work out. But it doesn't mean that it's a failure, because you actually get reward, and I mentioned this earlier on, you get reward for the efforts and the intentions, not necessarily the conclusion. Because the conclusion, the outcomes of your actions or other people's actions are all in Allah's hands. You can't control that, right? So you can plan, put in all the effort. Tomorrow I'm going to go and do this wonderful good deed, and then the next day there's a horrible storm and you can't leave the house. You'll get the reward though, right? But you can't control outcomes. And people who try to control outcomes or think they can control outcomes, they are the most depressed and anxious people, because they have set themselves up for failure. You're trying to control something that you can never control. So you're always going to fail in your goal, right? So control what you can control, which is your efforts today, your intentions, right? You focus on that, because only Allah is all capable. We are not all capable. We are only capable of what Allah gave us permission to be capable of. Okay, knowing Allah is timeless. This leads to increased focus on the present, using the past only for beneficial reflection and future only for beneficial planning. No ruminating on the past or anxiousness over the future. Again, a lot of people waste time like this, just ruminating endlessly for no reason. They can't get over the past, or they're just excessively anxious about the future, what's going to happen, and so on and so forth. And Allah has not created us to live like that. Right? Allah didn't create us to be timeless. Well, we can't, because we're creation. We have a beginning, we have an end. So Allah created us to be in the present, right? And that's basically khushu', right? That's mindfulness. So be in the present, only visit the past and the future to the extent necessary. So the past for, ensuring that you don't fall into past sins, right? A believer doesn't get be in the same place twice. Like, you should make sure you don't make the same mistakes over and over again. So you visit the past to an appropriate level to do that. And also the future, like we said, la aqla ka tadbiri, the Prophet said, there's no intelligence like planning. So visit the future to the extent it takes you to plan. Once you've made that plan and you made your du'as and you hope for the best, you don't, that's it, you leave it be and you just focus on the present. Because being anxious over it will not have any effect whatsoever, other than just ruining your present life, right? So again, this is another thing where people will say this, right? They will say that, yeah, we are creation. We're not like Allah. Only Allah is timeless. Only Allah, but then their practical, the way they live their life is not like that. They're trying to be something that they're not. They're trying to control things that they can't control. Okay, next. Knowing Allah is the controller of all your affairs, this leads to deeper focus and mindfulness during salah, letting go of worldly worry. So it's kind of sad because in salah we stand in front of Allah who controls everything, right? And we worry about things outside of salah. Whereas Allah is the one who has control over those things outside of salah, right? So if we're I don't know, let's say you're concerned about something, right? About something you have to do next, an appointment you have to go to, right? And you're thinking about that in salah. The thing is, Allah is the one who's in control of that appointment. So you're ignoring him to think about your appointment when he's the one who's in control of that appointment. Like, it doesn't make sense, right? So this is another thing. Yeah. So overall, it means, knowing Allah more deeply leads to constantly evaluating yourself in every situation. You think to yourself that according to what I believe about Allah, like I have said, I believe X, Y, and Z about Allah, will this action please him, right? Or it could not necessarily an action, it could even be a thought process, a reaction, right? An internal shift that will this be pleasing to him? And that is taqwā, right? And we need to bring that to life, in our lives. May Allah give us tawfiq. I mean, so moving on, the last topic is a brief one. It's on the pious predecessors and just a few of them, and the kind of feats they would get up to in Ramadan. So these are just a few examples. One, as I already mentioned, about Imam Abu Hanifa, also Imam Shafi, rahimahumullah, they would both actually complete 60 khatams in Ramadan. 60, right? So average Muslim, their goal is to finish one khatam, which is amazing, by the way. That's wonderful, right? We're never going to put any good deeds down. But they would complete 60. So I have a question, right? For you and I, it's for me as well, right? For all of us. Are we not even 1/60th of these men? Can't we be even 1/60th of them? Like, I'm not gonna say, be half of what Imam Abu Hanifa was, do 30 khatams, or be like, whatever it is, like 1/60th, subhanallah. Can we not even be that? Because look, they had the same 24 hours as you and I. They also had responsibilities and obligations. They did, right? They had families to look after. Imam Hanifa had many students he was looking after, so on and so forth. Like, they were also humans just like us. So if they can complete 60, surely we can complete one, right? And again, like sometimes a lot of people, they think to themselves, well, one is so much and so on, how can I do it? But if you set your mind to it, you absolutely can, right? Moving on. So Maulana Rashid Ahmad Gangohi, he would be so engrossed in reciting Quran that even going to and from his house, he never spoke. He would say that Ramadan is not a time for conversation, meaning throughout his day, the entire day, he was just Quran, 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 right? There was no point of time where his tongue was absent from that. He would just constantly be in a state of reciting Quran. Right, these are the truly fortunate people, subhanAllah. We pray Allah can make us like them. I mean, next, the grandmother of Sheikh Zakaria, rahimahullah, she would recite 40 juz a day in Ramadan, and all her daily litanies would reach 17,000 tasbihs in total. So, 40 juz a day, that's one khatam plus 10 juz. She would complete every day. Right? Again, she had responsibilities on, because sometimes, people can say, oh, because I'm a mother, I can't do as much. There are things you can do. But again, obviously it's case by, it differs person to person. But yeah, she would do 40 juz a day. And then on top of that, she used to do different forms of dhikr, right? So there were lots of different forms of dhikr she'd alternate over the day. But in total, all of those would come to 17,000. Subhanallah, right? That's amazing. And then can we not at least do 100? Can we not at least do tasbih Fatimi, right? We're not doing 17,000. And again, like, can we not even be like a percentage of who these people were? And by the way, that shouldn't be the end of our goal. Maybe we can actually totally be like these people one day. But as in right now and today, can we not be even just a percentage of who they were? We can, right? Inshallah. Moving on, whilst traveling once, this is amazing. Mullah Qasim Nanotwi, he memorized a juz a day in Ramadan in order to complete a khatam in Taraweeh. And in doing so, he completed hifz of the Quran in 1 month. So what happened was, just for context, but he was traveling and he wasn't a hafiz. And whilst he was traveling, there were no other huffaz. And so there was nobody who could lead Taraweeh and basically the Khatam Taraweeh anyways. And so he felt like, well, this can't be. I have to do a Khatam in Taraweeh. So he decided, you know what, I'm going to take it upon myself. So during the day, he would memorize one juz of Quran. Then for Taraweeh, he would recite that juz. Then the next day he'd memorize the next juz and then he'd recite it. And then by the end of the 30 days, he'd memorize the whole entire Quran for the sake of his Taraweeh. And look at the dedication, subhanAllah. He did this for the sake of his Taraweeh ultimately. Again, like if someone can do this all day long, they are preparing for their Taraweeh, this precious prayer that's only in Ramadan. All day long, he's just prepared for it. Surely we can put a bit more effort in our Taraweeh, right? Surely we can put a bit of thought during the day on how can I optimize my Taraweeh, subhanAllah. Next, Mullah Muhammad Ilyas, he is I think the uncle of Sheikh Zakaria. Sorry, but yeah, he would pray Maghrib. So, okay, this is amazing when it comes to prayer. He would be praying non-stop. He would pray Maghrib, and then he would immediately start praying Nafil Salah until Isha. Then he would pray Isha and Taraweeh, and then he would rest for a little while until 12 a.m. So I think that's about, yeah, basically just 2-3 hours. Some people are capable of that. By the way, I'm not saying sleep 2-3 hours. Usually people build themselves up to that, and different people need different amounts of sleep. But obviously, if he wanted to, he could have slept, by the way. Of course, he was just so dedicated to his salah, he didn't want to. So anyway, he would wake up at 12 a.m. and then he would wake up to pray tahajjud until fajr. So look at his day. It's just salah back to back to back to back to back. Just salah all night long. Subhanallah. Just so much dedication. Next, Marsh Ali Tanwi rahmallah, he would go for a walk after Fajr and he would recite 1/7 of the Quran, as in on his walk, with so much depth of contemplation that he would realize the answers to many fatwas and spiritual tribulations, and he'd make a note of these with pencil on paper. So what it is he would, and this is also really important because we're talking about a lot of quantity here. We can't forget that quantity is really important. Sorry, we're talking about a lot of quantity here, but we can't forget that quality is really important, just as important, right? And the internal state actually comes first, right? Like having the correct aqidah, having the correct intentions, all of that comes first, right? So he would go for a walk after Fajr. I believe it was 2 miles. He would walk for 2 miles every day after Fajr. And he would recite 1/7 of the Quran. And he would contemplate, he would focus so much, subhanAllah, that Allah used to just open doors for him. And he was if anyone doesn't know about him, I just highly encourage you learn about him. He was just an astonishing individual with what he achieved in his life, and he was also a jack of all trades. He was just good at everything. And the doors would just open and he'd just be receiving answers after answers, as in he was getting tawfiq to understand the answers to so many different questions and spiritual issues and like solutions for them and things like that. And he would go ready, right? He would go ready with a pencil and paper he'd be carrying with him so he can jot these all down. And this is why I included this is because it's such a nice example of including worship in your day-to-day life. Because he was going on this walk. Obviously he did this. This is obviously really beneficial for your physical health, right? To walk, but simultaneously he was doing Quran, and that was his actual focus. And he got so much benefit from it, and we can do this as well in our day-to-day life whilst we're just doing our normal things, looking after our physical bodies. Absolutely, we can incorporate the spiritual. And finally, Sheikh Hussein Ahmad Madani, he would lead Taraweeh so passionately that every day the entire masjid resonated with people sobbing and weeping. It's mentioned that there was like an electric vibe in the masjid. And it's like the masjid would be shaking with people's trembling and weeping, subhanallah, right? And this is also really important. We can't underestimate our own sincerity and how our sincerity affects people around us. The more sincere we are, the more we can benefit other people, right? Um, there are so many people who read Quran every day, but why is it that the Prophet reciting Quran changed the entire world? Um, and many of us recite Quran and can't even change ourselves, right? SubhanAllah. So this is where, the internal state is really important. I'm also very cognizant of the fact that you've afforded me your precious time in Ramadan. It's a huge responsibility and burden on me as well, that I have to make sure that this time I've given you is spent well, that I've done it well, that I'm sincere, that because if I'm sincere, then if I'm insincere, sorry, how can I benefit anybody? So, I pray for sincerity for all of us. I mean, that's also really, really important. So, that actually, brings us to the final question that we're going to ask of in this, which is, um, if all these righteous people were able to do so much, how much can we do this Ramadan? How much can we do? Um, Imagine if you were told that this is your last Ramadan, how desperate would you be to make every second count? How much would you cherish every moment of worship? And how eager would you be to seek forgiveness, do good, and gain Allah's mercy? And the thing is, right, these kind of questions, when you ask them, people they say, "Oh, that's so deep. Like we don't need to go that deep." Some people say these things, but the thing is, it's reality though. One day will be your last Ramadan. 1/15th Ramadan will be the last 15th Ramadan you ever experience. It has to be the case. There's no way around it. And so, and the thing is, we don't know. We don't know when our last Ramadan will be. Allah takes people back to Him from 1 years old to 100 years old. We don't know. When every Ramadan, before every Ramadan, there are people passing away. There's people passing away during Ramadan. We just don't know when it will be us, but one day it will be us. So we should live each Ramadan as if it's our last, because one day it will be, right? And yeah, subhanallah. And like I said, if the pious, our pious predecessors were able to do so much, we have the same 24 hours, we have the same merciful, generous Rabb. Why can't we do even a percentage of what they've done? We can, inshallah. So, right, that actually concludes today's workshop. And so, before I end, Muslim Family Foundation offers a lot of different courses. There are a lot of, so this upcoming weekend, there is a Seeking Your Soulmate course, which is really beneficial. There's almost nothing else like it, which is all about how to make sure that people who are unmarried select the right spouse for them. I mean, even if you're already married, it's fine, like you can benefit your children or whatever it is, but this is one of the, most important decisions you make in your life. So yeah, there's a course next weekend on that. But there are other courses, just other courses on like maintaining marriage, just marriage tips, and there are mental health workshops. There are many other workshops that the Muslim Family Foundation offers. So to get the latest updates on that, to be updated, it'd be best if you join our WhatsApp channel. So there's a QR code here. If you actually take a picture with your phone, or if you just actually for whoever doesn't know how to use a QR code, you basically put your camera on and you put it over this picture of the QR code, and a link should come up on your screen. And if you click the link, it will lead you to our WhatsApp channel, where inshallah you should get all the latest updates of what we are doing. And they're all really beneficial, so please join and please keep updated and check everything out. So we are on questions now. I know some of you are asking questions along the way. So I'm just going to start with whoever asked questions earlier on. Just give me a moment. Okay, so somebody asked, can you discuss further about triaging, prioritizing, and also about Taraweeh, the options we have? So triaging, yes. So triaging, we mentioned that right at the beginning for whoever came late, but it's about prioritizing the most important things first. And for us as believers, the fard actions come first, because we're liable for the fard actions, but also it's not just that if you don't do the fard actions, you'll go to hell. Allah save us all from that, I mean. But it's also the fact that you get the most reward for the fard actions. The fard actions give you much more reward than the sunnah actions, and the sunnah actions give you much more reward than the nafil actions, right? So it's a tiered yeah, it's on a tier, and so you want to always prioritize that. So your 5 daily salahs, you should focus the most on making sure you give them enough time, making sure that you're able to focus, so on and so forth. So if that means that's at the detriment of other nafal actions, then let it be the case. That's fine, right? You'll actually benefit far more from that. But there's also triaging outside of a worship of Allah, which is other forms of worship, such as service to people. That's also important. So you want to make sure you're taking care of the rights of people. If you're depriving people of their rights and your whole day is full of nafal actions, how will you benefit? On the day of judgment, we actually pay people back by giving them our good deeds. So it's like you're doing good deeds and automatically cancelling it out because you're depriving people of their rights. You're harming people, or else it may be. So we have to make sure we're not doing that, right? And that comes to the basics, really, like not backbiting and lying and things like that. These things will just strip our fast of all reward. Um, and we don't obviously want that to be the case. That's just so sad, subhanAllah, to fast so many hours and it's all cancelled out by just a few words we just couldn't help but say. For what reason, right? So that's another thing as well. And there's obviously then productivity tips, just triaging in day-to-day life, how to be more productive. You can look online more for that. Unfortunately, don't have the time during this session. Also, about Taraweeh. Uh, so we have, I think you asked this right at the beginning, we did talk about Taraweeh, I think, along the way. So if you have any further questions, let me know. I'll move on to the next one. So can you be emailed this PowerPoint? So this is being recorded. I believe it'll be made available. So yeah, moving on. Yeah, so as for taking screenshots, as I said along the way, you're more than welcome to do that. You can keep those screenshots to benefit yourself. Okay, somebody asks, can you see Allah in a dream? So, all right. So a lot of people, they do actually have a lot of good dreams during Ramadan. That's because the Prophet said, "Astaqu ru'ya bil ashar." The most beneficial of dreams are at suhoor time, right? And a lot of people, I mean, if they dream or they don't know because they're waking up after suhoor time, well into Fajr. So they've had like a mixture of all sorts of dreams. You don't know what's true, what's not. A lot of people don't even remember what they dreamt. And so you do actually hear, more people having these good dreams and remembering them because they're waking up at suhoor time. They're like, oh, I just had this dream. So yeah, the topic of dreams does actually come up. May Allah give us all good dreams, enable us to dream of the process regularly, in the best of states. I mean, now, can you see Allah in a dream? So there are many scholars who have. Now, if you see him in a dream, it's not actually seeing him because that's not possible as we are now. So, for example, the ru'ya of Allah in paradise that will take place, it will happen without without the way in a way that we don't see now. Because, for example, when I see right now, I have to face a direction and I'm looking at a physical thing, whereas Allah is not a physical being. So we'll see Allah in paradise, but we don't know how right now, right? But we absolutely will see him, right? But not how we see with our eyes right now, because that involves the physical realm, which is creation, and Allah is not creation. So the people who've seen Allah, it's more so that they've experienced something where like Allah has spoken to them and things like that in their dream. Yeah, but it's not seeing literally. That's a really important thing to clarify. But yeah, you can. The more important thing is reality though. So some people, they just get so swept up with dreams and I want good dreams, but the focus is live a good life. If you live a good life, there's a saying that the most truthful person in speech is the most truthful in dreams, right? So just live a good life, be a good person. That's the biggest blessing you can actually get. And getting into paradise, we can talk to Allah directly then, see him directly then. That's the biggest thing of all, which we should really be focused on. Okay, if a woman lives by herself, can she intend her whole home for itikaf, or does she have to single out a room? No, it should be a room, her prayer, a designated prayer space. It can't be so expansive and huge. It has to be a designated, so it should be a room that she does her itikaf in. Is Shaitan locked up on Eid? No, that doesn't seem to be the case, unfortunately. He's locked up. The hadith mentioned he's locked up for Ramadan. And that's why that's why we want to think ahead on how we're going to maximize our Eid. Because unfortunately, Shaitan can come out and immediately people, unfortunately, turn away from Allah. We don't want that to be the case. And again, if you follow the Sunnah, the Prophet said, we should worship Allah on Eid night. Then if we do that, then we're automatically, avoiding all of that, and we're repelling shaitan from the get-go. So we should follow the Sunnah practices to protect ourselves. Can I have intention for nafil i'tikaf before I teach students at madrasa, or does nafil i'tikaf have to be done at the prayer space at home? So no, so for so your nafil i'tikaf has to be in your designated prayer space. So yeah, that's going to be at home. And the only other place it can take place in is the main congregation hall in the masjid. And obviously your madrasa is not filling that criteria. So no, that won't actually count. You can't do nafil i'tikaf. That being said, you're doing a wonderful good deed anyway, which is teaching students. So that's by itself is a great form of worship. Okay, okay, so if we're finding it difficult to fit in 20 rakats of Taraweeh, how do we navigate this? So, the quality of Taraweeh, you just focus on that. You can actually cut back on recitation, but you have to make sure you get 20 done. So reciting 20 rak'ahs praying 20 rak'ahs is a non-negotiable. It's a sunnah mu'akkada. If you miss a sunnah mu'akkada repetitively, you'll be sinful for it. As if you make a habit of it, you'll be sinful. So you have to pray 20 rak'ahs. Oh, this is obviously if you're Hanafi or Shafi'i. Anyways, but the point is, if you're praying 20 rak'ahs, you should be praying 20 rak'ahs. And that is in the Hanafi madhab, is sunnah mu'akkada, you have to do it. And so that is what you should prioritize. So if it means because you're a busy mother or whatever else it is, you can't recite as much, then that's fine. You can cut back on the recitation a bit, but make sure you get the 20 rak'ahs done. Okay, I'm just going to take a last one. How do I control my waswas? Even in Ramadan, I get thoughts, not as bad, but unwanted thoughts, and I feel like I have to redo whatever I'm doing without having bad thoughts. Is this waswas, and how do I stop hearing this? So the thing is, why is it that we continue to do bad or have we see negative effects in ourselves and in our lives, even in Ramadan when shaitan is locked out? This is actually a nafs issue. So the nafs can become accustomed. It can actually be trained to think negatively or to assume the worst, right? This is actually one of the things that is actually an animalistic tendency. So animals think the worst in order to survive. Like if you hear a twig snapping behind you, and you think to yourself that must be my best friend, then in terms of survival, that might be problematic. You'd be concerned, like, what's going on behind me? Anyway, so this is like how animals are. Like, they'll just assume the worst. Like, in terms of survival, they'll assume that I'm going to there's some kind of harm, there's some kind of danger. We have an aspect of that as well, because obviously our physical bodies want to protect it, but it needs to be controlled. It can go out of control, and that is a nafs that's basically not been trained properly. It will constantly think negatively, just assuming the worst about everything, just thinking, okay, that must have not been. And this is something that needs to be trained. It's actually a nafs issue. It can now shaitan can trigger it. So shaitan can trigger you to think of something, but he can't force you to actually think like that. Shaitan can't force you to do anything. So if you're obsessively thinking about something, obsessively, thinking about something negatively, your worship is being consumed by these kind of thoughts. You feel like you have to continue to repeat. Then you have to actually take on certain habits to stop that thought process, those thought processes. And there are many kind of things available for people who suffer from a lot of waswas and these kind of uncontrollable thoughts. There's actually there are a lot of resources available for them. You can actually look it up online. Many kind of shuyukh have given lots of really beneficial tips for that, but that's actually what you should work on. And no, if you did a form of worship with bad thoughts, you don't repeat it. Yeah. You just like I said, work on this issue, and you just because the more you overly focus or pay attention to the negative thoughts and give them that validity, the more you actually reinforce the cycle of negative thoughts. So you're not actually supposed to pay them any attention. And of course, make dua and so on, that Allah removes this difficulty from you. I pray Allah does. I mean. All right, so we'll actually stop there. Jazakumul khair, everyone, for attending. I pray Allah accepts it from all of us and grants us tawfiq to act upon everything. آمين. Alright, subhanallahi bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk, subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun, wa salamun ala al-mursaleen, walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin, bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Assalamu alaikum, everybody.